when we look at Iran funding people in the region, I don't disagree with that as well. I think Iran is the number one instigator of bad guy things right now in the Middle East. Iran, the IRGC, I supported when Donald Trump killed Soleimani. I think that was a great thing. I think that Iran is a major problem. However, I don't know if the path forward is constantly being a belligerent to Iran or trying to figure out some road to normalcy. I don't know if the collapse of Iran or the destruction of that country, considering how unpopular the Ayatollah even is there, like the citizens of Iran, I don't think are big supporters of the government there. I feel like moving on a path where, let's do our nuclear inspections. We had that Iranian nuclear deal that Trump pulled out of. Let's do the nuclear inspections. Make sure you're not on a way to nuclear weapons. Let's unfreeze some funds. Let's move in some direction where we get on a good term with you. I feel like that's the most important thing that needs to happen in the Middle East. As much as people like to look at the Abraham Accords, who cares if, what was it? Bahrain, I think Oman, I think
UAE,
Sudan,
Morocco.
The UAE and Morocco, are something like all of these people, even Saudi Arabia, already have like de facto normalization with Israel anyway. They're all trading.
No, this is, to pretend that anybody even 15 years ago would have been talking about normalization in Saudi Arabia and Israel is insane. That's insane.
They were already on that path.
They
had already been they were already de facto trading partners with each other. They had already been collaborating and doing things.
That's a wild claim that Israel and Saudi Arabia were going to normalize 15 years ago.
15 years ago might have been a wild claim.
But
after Turkey, after Jordan, and then in the past 20 years of economic relations and ties with each other, all of the leadership in the Middle East, and you'll agree with this, look at Israel and they go, okay, well, we've got Palestinians who, God bless them, do nothing. And then you've got Israel, which is on a region with no natural resources to somehow become like an economic giant. They're good to trade with. Their population is educated. They, have military power. All of the leadership in these Middle Eastern countries are wanting to be friendly with Israel and are engaging in trade de facto with Israel. And the idea that the UAE and Bahrain were brought in to say oh, well, now we're going to officially say this.
Those were the first steps toward obviously the formation of a new Middle East in which economics would predominate over sectarian conflict. The chief obstacle to that is Iran.
I agree.
The notion that negotiations with the Ayatollah were going to be a solution to any of this is,
but do we think
absolutely benighted.
Is it the Abraham Accords that's convincing Saudi Arabia to take a stance against Iran?
No, Saudi Arabia.
They're already fighting. They're already fighting with each other, right?
No,
I don't think the Abraham Accords moved us any closer towards any type of real peace in the region.
No, the point
what has to happen is something has to happen with Iran. There has to be some diplomatic bilateral communication there.
No, what has to happen is the containment of Iran, which was what was taking place with the increased normalization with the Sunni Arab world and Israel, combined with significant economic sanctions. The notion that there's this far-fetched notion in foreign policy circles that diplomacy can sort of be wish cast out of thin air. That if you sit around a table, that you can always come to an agreement with somebody. The Ayatollahs do not have common interests with the United States. They do not. And this idea that they are willing to take money in exchange for example, some sort of peaceful acquiescence to Israel's existence is obviously untrue.
Hasn't that been the case, though? That you've had a region with tons of sectarian violence for a long time, and then finally Turkey was like, you know what? This isn't worth it. The United States paid them a lot of money. They had conversations with Israel. And you know what? The economy, the economic gains.
Well, the relation.
Same thing with Jordan. Same thing with
not getting into Turkish politics. But
sure,
but the situation with Turkey was actually quite warm between Israel and Turkey in the 90s when you had the sort of secular Muslim regime
in the 90s, but they signed
Kemal Ataturk in place, and now Erdogan has joined in the fray, and Erdogan is significantly more radical than what came before.
So sorry. If I said Turkey, I meant Egypt. My bad.
Yeah. Okay. So
Egypt. Yeah.
Right.
So in terms of Egypt and Jordan, right, were the first two.
You need
big ones.
So here's the thing. Mm-hmm. Is it possible that you could theoretically come to a deal with Iran only with a new leadership crew? Okay. This is true for every peace agreement in the region. Mm-hmm. You could not. Israel could not have made peace with.
Well, they made peace with Egypt, and Sadat was the leader for Yom Kippur, right?
He did not make peace with Nasser. Right.
Sure.
The point is that this is a different regime. You need a different regime.
But I'm saying the same regime that did the part of the Yom Kippur War was the same regime that negotiated peace with Israel.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
It is also true that is a relationship that could be cultivated specifically because it was Sadat who made clear he was going to come to the table. Mm-hmm. Have the Iranians ever made clear that they would come to the table over, for example, the existence of the state of Israel?
No.
That is not a thing that's going to happen.
But I think people probably felt the same.
Every single one of their proxy groups, every one of them, not only calls for the destruction of the state of Israel, they also call for the destruction of America. This is literally the Houthi slogan. They're busy hitting ships, and their slogan is literally Allahu Akbar, death to America, death to the Jews, death to Israel. It doesn't fit on a bumper sticker, and it's not all that catchy, but that is in fact their slogan. The notion that the regime that propagates that is going to be approached with diplomacy is not only wrong. The problem is that it's easy to say that the stakes of diplomacy are okay. Well, so we try to talk, right? Jaw is better than war. Sure. The only problem is that in the Middle East, weakness is taken as a sign that aggression might be an appropriate response. That is how things work in the Middle East. And the fact that that Joe Biden came into office with an orientation toward continuing the Obama policies in Iran has led to conflagrations, these sort of brush fires breaking out everywhere that Iran has borders with either the West or Israel or both, right? Any place that's happening is leading to brush fires because, again, the logic of violence in the Middle East is not quite the logic of violence in other places in the world. By the way, I think the logic of violence in the Middle East is actually closer to what most international politics looks like than we wish that it were. I mean, I think that's part of what's happening in Ukraine as well.
So you think
which brings me, by the way, here's my question about Ukraine.
Sure. Well, just real quick, and then you can answer this one now. So you think that for Iran, right, a country that has been sanctioned for God knows how many years now, you think that for Iran, just continuing to sanction them and contain them is an effective way, is more effective than trying to engage them in bilateral or multilateral peace talks?
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
And the proof is in the pudding.